Right. So anyway, welcome to Regenerative Leadership. Uh, and I've just got the recording going. I heard that some of you have had some difficulty in logging into the course. Is that true?
Yeah, I had they sent me like the information that it was available, but I couldn't log in, but it's okay now. They figure it out.
Okay. So I don't know how many people have been able to sort of cover the week one materials and sort of the readings and things to prepare for this morning or this afternoon or this evening, wherever you are. So I'll probably summarize some of the things that we should have covered, prior to the session. But I don't want to take too much time over that because I want to get into more of a conversation with you about what you want to do and your expectations for the course. Since there's so few of us at the moment anyway, we probably won't need to go into breakout rooms, which if we have more, there are actually 13 people in the course. We'd actually get you into small groups or pairs and do some work individually, but that allows people to feel a little less embarrassed about speaking what they want to do. But since there's a few of us, we probably can take advantage of the time here in this chat session and get things done. Do you have any initial questions? Okay, well, let's do this thing. Why don't we do a quick round between the four of us and introduce ourselves so we know where you are, what you do, and what you would expect or hope to get from the course. So let's start with Marianela. And
Yeah,
here's
thank
somebody else.
you. Hi, I'm from Costa Rica. I think I know some of you. I'm not sure, maybe Efderson. And what I want to do with the course, well, I'm already working on it. I work in a private university, and we are trying to establish a lab for research that will have social impact, whereas I guess it's more like broad because it's thinking about impacting the environment, but also impacting communities. So
Mhm.
that's what we're doing right now. We are private university, which means that fundings are not as big as public universities in Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, public universities are very, very well funded, and private universities not that much. So that's what I'm working on right now. We already have a physical space, we already have the equipment, and we are already bringing in some teachers that want to join, which has been very hard because we cannot pay like extra hours for those teachers right now. They're doing it pro bono or ad honorem. I don't know how
Oh,
you say that.
yep,
And
that's correct.
yeah, and we're now in the stage of recruiting students. That's what we're doing right now.
Okay. So your core mission is social.
Yeah,
Right.
what I really want to do is to get them to have support, like a systemic support inside the institution so that this research can go and actually can be implemented, because we are good at theoretical research, but we are
Sure.
bad like jumping from theory to practice.
Yeah, application.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually got a project to share with you that came in this morning from a former student of mine from Kenya that I think you might find interesting. But
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a completely different project, but I think it's got some interesting um, angles to it that you might find interesting. Farouk, why don't you tell us what you do and where you are?
Hello everyone, good afternoon. It's 3 p.m. Here. My name is Shuruk Shaheen. I'm originally from Syria. Now I'm in the UK in Glasgow. My educational background, I'm a rheumatologist, finished my MD, then my specialty medical training. Here I'm doing a master in health services management. Actually, during the last 12 years, during the conflict in Syria, I worked with many local NGOs and associations regarding like empowering medical staff to be an active citizens in many like social and health institutions. So I gained many experience, like field experience, but I was lack of like academic potential regarding these aspects. So here I am. I'm doing either my master in health management, and I do believe that regenerative leadership will empower me with the knowledge frameworks and all these important information regarding how to manage these aspects. And it was a pleasure meeting all of you. Thank you.
This is obviously a great career, great profession that has been sometimes abused. And one of the things that we will be looking into is the work of Frederic Laloux. He wrote a book called Reinventing Organizations. And that we'll be looking at that in week 4 probably. And one of his case studies in his research is actually a health services management company in Holland, and how they completely turned around nurse visits to patients, and how they went away from the shorter time you can spend with a patient and give them the medication, get out and go to the next patient, the better. They turned that around and actually took care of the patient in their needs and established relationships. And that company became more profitable than the health management corporations that actually just did everything by the numbers and with a bottom line was profit. So some interesting examples out there of how health management can be, how it's evolving more consciously. But anyway, we'll get back to that. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself? Hi, Mandy. Hi, Everderson. And we'll get to you in a second. We're just doing introductions. So, Joe, you're in Malawi, and what do you do? We can't hear you. You're muted.
Right. Thank you. So nice hearing from Nela. I think we've met before. And Shuruk, and is it Eversoy? All right. So I'm from Malawi, as I said, the warm heart of Africa. So basically, I am a team lead volunteer for Anishak in Malawi, and to organize a local innovation sprint. And before that, I was also a volunteer and volunteered for CoAfrica. So as a CoAfrica volunteer, I integrated and lived in a remote rural community where I facilitated small scale, yet high impact community-led development projects. So, for example, soap making project, a women's soap making project, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, that's it about me, in short.
Great. Yeah, I actually replied to you this morning. The project I mentioned before actually is probably going to be closer to your interest. This project in Kenya. But anyway, we'll get to that. Are you called Everderson? Is that how you call yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Everderson. It is a French name, but you can call me Everderson, as you can pronounce it. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you. Just to be sure that I understand the question. The question is that
where are you and what do you do?
Okay, basically I'm Haitian, but not living in Haiti right now because I'm living in Canada for a master degree in finance.
Okay.
But after studying after studying finance, like doing an MBA, I also, as you know, conducting a diploma on leadership, social leadership at UPIS. And as activity, I created with some friend an organization which named Place, which is a leadership school program. With this program, we trying to teach leadership and entrepreneurship to high school students, because we think that if we start teaching and start helping high school student and developing their leadership and entrepreneurship skill healthier, they can also start impacting their community healthier, and tomorrow we can have a really good society. And as you know, I don't know if you all are informed about Haiti. Haiti need those kind of citizens, people who need to take action and make change. So this is practically what we are doing, and I think that's it.
Fantastic. You've actually mentioned a double bottom line, which would be economic and social.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges in Haiti in the past has been environmental, because of the deforestation of Haiti. So one of the key challenges there is how do you create entrepreneurs who will bring back nature as well as empower economic prosperity and obviously empowerment of people. So great, this could be a great project to look at and see how you frame it in such a way that you can build that awareness of how everything we do impacts, and economics is obviously at the heart of everything that we do. So I think that that's a great starting point, and looking forward to the discussion. So, morning, Dean. We're actually having conversations about people introducing themselves, what they do, where they are, and what their expectations are. So we've got Mandy, and then you, and then we'll get on to other things. Go ahead, Mandy.
Hi, everybody. I love hearing where everyone is from and what everyone is up to. It's always so inspiring, innovative, and just fun to collaborate. I live in Chicago, in the US, right in the heart of it. I don't live in the city. Too busy for me. I live out more, but it's fun. And I've worked, I used to teach high school science, biology and anatomy teacher. Then I got into leadership roles there for like assistant principal, ran a lot of social emotional programming, academic resources, behavioral interventions. Then I worked for a few nonprofits and then somehow stumbled into the world of mental health. So now I'm COO for a company called MedCircle. And so we're essentially a mental health education company. So it's been a journey. I have already gotten my global leadership certificate from UPeace, and now I'm back to finish social innovation because I just love it. I can't get enough. The people are amazing. I still talk to many people from that first round, including my mentor. So it's been a great experience overall.
Phenomenal. Okay, so somebody also in the health services industry. So it's good to have you here. And we'll be talking more about that. So, Dean, tell us. Dean has a very interesting profile. I'm delighted to have him here. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody, and I apologize for me being late to the meeting. It's time is it here? Just after 7 a.m. in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. So I'm in the office right now. Had to leave a bit early, and then sign on proved to be a little bit difficult. Anyways, so pleased to meet you all virtually. Again, my name is Dean Duthie. I'm from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, on the West Coast. Beautiful part of the world. I feel very blessed to live here and raise a family and serve here. I've been, what I do for a living is I'm a police officer. I've been serving with the Saanich Police Department I'm in my 30th year right now. And it's been an experience that I could spend a lot of time talking about, but the changes in policing locally, provincially, nationally, internationally has been significant, especially since the technology age has really taken foot. So yeah, this is my background. Other than being a police officer, I do have my master's in education from the University of Victoria, and I recently did an executive master's in international police leadership from Charles Sturt University in Australia. Again, just like Mandy just mentioned, I have a thirst for learning and improving myself. And I was introduced to UPeace many years ago, actually, by a very close friend and mentor who was a professor at University of Victoria, now runs a equity, diversity, inclusion program out of a university in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And he introduced me to UPeace again many years ago, but the timing wasn't right for me back then, and I kind of revisited this opportunity now, and I'm jumping right in and I'm very excited to learn from all of you and work through this program in global leadership.
That's fantastic. And great to have you here. We can start talking about climate change up there in Saanich. I'm sure there are things happening that you can discuss and we can talk about. I'm actually sitting on a dissertation at this time. I'm a qualitative researcher, so I'm sitting on a dissertation with a student, actually a female student, who's looking into the use of social media by police departments to report out to the community on minor and significant events. So exploring the value of social media for communicating and integrating the community with regard to minor and significant events. And very interesting study. So maybe that might be something that could interest you. Anyway, just to finish off, Ali, last but not least, where people are introducing themselves, telling us where they're from, what they hope to get out of the course, and what they do. So if you could just be, briefly something about who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name's Ali. I am currently in BC in Canada, which is where I live. I call myself a multi-passionate pracademic. So I've spent some time in academia, did a PhD in behavioral economics, and then helped to build a software startup, which was the kind of application of the theory of it was my opportunity to apply the theory of like what constitutes a good life and well-being and all those sorts of things in workplaces, and it was quite successful in creating like a really positive human-focused culture rather than profit-focused. It was purpose-driven and people-focused, and so for me, I also like the environment, obviously the environment and climate change, and how we integrate people and planet into our ways of doing things is super important. So that's what sort of brought me. I've spoken a couple of times at the online version of the GGH conference. Yeah. I haven't had the chance to go in person yet, but hopefully I will. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to learn more about this integration of a better way of leading than the old models. So thank you. I'm really excited. I have to re-watch everybody's introductions. I'm sorry I was late. I was clicking on the wrong link. It was taking me to something that was scheduled for in 2004, and then the current one was actually in the calendar. I don't know if anyone else had that problem or just me.
Oh, okay. I'll reach out to Astrid to make sure she cleans up all of that mess so that we don't have that issue going forward. Then just thank you for letting me know. So this course, Regenerative Leadership, is something that evolved or emerged from my own research. So this is my own work, and that's why you have my book divided into chapters week by week, and hopefully you'll have time and be able to get into the website and read it. But I'll be covering the Regenerative Leadership Framework next week. So, for week 2, you're actually going to have that presentation, which is recorded, that you can see, and then we'll have a conversation about the framework itself and how you can then translate that into your own work. I do not have the magic bullet. I don't have the recipe. I don't have the quick fix. We are going into a completely different space with regard to leadership here, based on my research with people who are effective sustainability leaders back then in business, in education, in community, and in government. And all of their experiences with their organizations have actually allowed, at least for me, to abstract and conceptualize some of the things that they do and they are that can help us understand how to address the complex challenges we're facing today. And so this is a little bit of a break from traditional leadership. We might say this is elements of transformational leadership. If you look at McGregor Burns, or servant leadership, if you look at Robert Greenleaf, or we will be looking at Ron Heifetz and adaptive leadership, because that's one of the complementary leadership theories or practices, as well as Frederick Laloux, as I mentioned before, in reinventing organizations. So there are so many other frameworks as well, and I don't pretend to know it all. This is just what I discovered, and I'm sharing here. And basically, anything I can share with you is useless until you actually apply it. So I like what Ali said about being a pracademic. this is not a theory course. This is something where hopefully I can provide you with some tools to begin to figure out a more complete version of yourselves and a more complete approach to what you do. So that when you actually do implement something, then you will be considering the triple, not bottom line, but the triple top line. How we can actually grow prosperity, celebrate community, and enhance the health of all species for all time. And that's the challenge. And that's what I would say the mission of regenerative leadership is, or is about. So how we can, all of you have different already very strong focuses on the things that you do or want to do. What we want to do here is see how we can actually look at how a curriculum also can have considerations of how we improve the environment, not just mitigate or adapt to climate change, how we can actually improve. Or if you have a financial or economic mission, how do you ensure that the approach that you have to growing prosperity actually also grows and benefits the environment, the natural environment, and empowers people socially so that communities can become more prosperous and happier and more joyous and more effective, more successful, not only for this generation, but for future generations. So with that said, there are two main deliverables for the course. I sent them all to you by email. So you all have a copy of the personal leadership self-assessment and the copy of the outline of the regenerative project. So I'll go through those briefly, and then we can take questions. The intent here is for you to actually complete the self-assessment first, which is a questionnaire, which has a table at the end, where based on how you assess yourself in that questionnaire, you create a little table with an action plan for yourself as to things that you would like to work on more in order to become a better leader. And then the project, of course, is an outline, and we'll go through them and then answer questions. But my first question to you is, and this is supposed to move the needle a little bit about what this is all about, is what do you think the greatest problem facing us today is? So let's go the other way around. So, Dean, what do you think the greatest problem is facing us today as a species?
Wow, that's a very deep question. But just going off the top of my head, it's understanding, it's communication, and it's perspective is what I can see, where we're looking globally. What I interpret is what a lot of leaders they look too much in a view things in a silo. What is right for their part of the world right here, right now, rather than looking at the bigger picture and more expansive in terms of global health and prosperity.
Okay, good. So awareness and communications. These are two key top points, which actually, what I call they are a layer above the actual problem. Anybody else? What do you think the main problem is? Marianela, anybody, any thoughts?
I
Can you
was
add to this?
thinking, no, I was thinking about it because I think there are many, there are many different problems, but I think that one big one, at least one that I've noticed, is the fact that we can hold like different ideas and values at the same time. You know, like I can think, okay, I want this to change, but I still like, I want the environment to be better, but I still will drive my own car because it's easy and I have access to it. And I don't really need to reconcile those things in my head. I can just go with both ideas at the same time. And we have that for many, many things. Like sometimes our values and our actions do not align. And it's not because we're bad people. It's just because we can hold those two different things in our minds at the same time. And the dissonance have to be very, very big for us to be moved into acting our values sometimes. So I think that's that's something there. I don't think there is, I don't know, I give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I don't think there's like really mean people out there trying to do harm. I just think they all have rationalized their way into their actions, and sometimes that is that actions are not very good. But I think it's because of that. I think that we all have the ability to live in contradiction, and that contradiction is not challenged often.
Excellent point. Yeah, we are a paradox. Go ahead, Mandy.
I feel like a lot of this is based off of needs, like core needs not being met, because of the reality and also perception of scarcity. Like there's a misalignment with distribution for all of our resources, whether it's money, whether it's plants and crops and all of that. I see it probably because I was a biology teacher. I have a very biopsychosocial view on things. So the biology, the psychology, the social component to it, biology including the environment. But when our needs, our basic needs as humans aren't being met, we can act in very primal ways. And then layered on top of maybe the traumas we've been through or the values we have or whatnot, it just gets very complex. And to speak to Dean earlier as well, we get siloed and we kind of live in these bubbles and can only see what's right in front of us. And then, is it Marianella?
Marianella, yes.
Beautiful. And like you spoke to, I don't think people are inherently bad. I think they're just trying to get some basic needs met and using what they have available to them or what they know. So I think that's a core driver. I'm sure there's layers underneath that, but I do think that plays a huge component in the issues we're facing in the world today and kind of always have as a species from a long time ago.
Good. Well, we're going to do a little activity in a minute, and I think that might help clarify. Sharuk, you unmuted yourself and then muted again. Anything you wanted to add?
As my colleagues mentioned, I totally agree. Maybe it's according to priorities. For me, sometimes I do believe that conflict and lack of resources will be the main problem for me. But when I try to think globally and for all human beings, I do believe that all the problems related to like climate change and environmental degradation will exacerbate any other problem like food and water scarcity or any like healthcare crisis or any conflict related issues. All these things, interconnected problems. And I do believe that climate change exacerbates and worsens all of those. So yeah.
Right. So all of these are true. And you're actually, as a group, you're quite more sophisticated than other groups I've worked with, because some people go off on, yeah, overpopulation, we've got to do something about that. Obviously, climate change, oil, we've got to phase out oil, one of the things that we know. But basically, all of these are just symptoms of something else. And there's no other species on the planet that we can actually accuse of overpopulation or doing things with oil or whatever. It's only us that does this. So it's interesting that we seem to have an incapacity to understand where the origin of the problem lies. And before I give the stupid and simple answer, I hope that you might trust me enough to do a little activity. Would that be okay? All right. I'm going to ask you to sit up straight and close your eyes. Since you're all such evolved beings, I'm sure you're going to participate in this very well. You can't turn off your camera if you're embarrassed. If not, just sit straight, close your eyes, make sure your back is straight. Get your spine there, just breathe in and just let go and just to enjoy and appreciate this unique moment that will never be repeated again. And one of the things that we do have is with multitasking and technologies that the difficulty in actually coming together and being together and enjoying and appreciating a moment together we can reflect on who we are, what we do, and where we're going and why and what we want to do. So just breathe in and allow this moment to sink in, and try to let any distracting thoughts just come by and move forward, move pass you by, just like clouds, so that they don't interfere with just being present here in the moment. And if we can all do that, then we can really engage in an enjoyable experience and maybe extract something from this experience that can help us understand some of the underlying things that are happening to us and who we are and what we do. So as you're in this moment of being here and being present, I'm going to ask you to transport yourself to the last moment of your life, those last minutes when you're about to pass over, regardless of what your beliefs or values might be. These are the last moments of your life, and obviously at this time you are surrounded by your family, your loved ones, people who worked with you, your acquaintances, people in the community. And clearly at this time, because it is you that's about to pass over, these people are talking about you. To think about those conversations that your family is having, other loved ones, friends, colleagues, what are they saying about you at this time when there's nothing left for you to do? And see if you can record some of those brief conversations, just to see what they're saying and to reflect on them without any kind of judgment or regret. Just what are they saying about you at this time? And think about that for a second. Just listening to their voices and what they're saying. And then as you record those conversations, I'll have you come back to right now, where you are in this moment today, and think about what that you there at the end of your life would actually tell you about what to do or how you can do things, so that you can get to the end of your life having no regrets, really having left behind a legacy that you can be pleased with, feeling that you've fulfilled your contract, you've actually completed your work, and you've left behind something so much better than what was there before because of what you did and who you were. So think about that. A couple of bits of advice that we would give your younger self today from the experience and the wisdom of what you've accumulated over the rest of your life. And take a deep breath in, smile, enjoy the moment, and just come back. You don't have to share, but if anybody would like to share, go ahead. Anything come up? Yes, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting exercise. I appreciate that. What came up for me is advice I'd be giving myself is to slow down a little bit. Really everything that I do in my life right now is in my family and at work as a leader, I try and focus the most I can on how I make people feel. The speed of life and business and public safety and risk, everything that kind of filters into my life constantly is overwhelming and can drain you of your ability to really connect on a human level to people that you're surrounded by. And so that's what I would be doing, is telling myself to slow down and really focus more on connection with people at work and at home, because they're two totally different environments for me that I have to switch gears big time to really be present.
Wow, good one. Good insight. Who else? Any other insights? Dare to be brave. Go ahead, Sharuk. Yes.
Yeah, actually, the first thing came to my mind is I have to be more brave to stop overthinking every step I would like to take on the opposite side, and to give myself the opportunity to live the life in all details and stop like taking care of perfectionism as I used to do. It's okay just to go through the experiences. It's not all about like being excellent in academics or being like 100% perfect in my job. So yeah, I have to be more brave in taking these actions.
That's a great insight. And hopefully, one of the things I am in education, I'm in educational leadership, and I work with public schools in Florida, even though I live in Massachusetts, about creating not just a safe space, but a brave space where we are responsible for what we say, but we can share anything in this space in order to come up with something better going forward. And very often, what we're going to be seeing is the greatest problem in our lives is also the most valuable thing in our lives. And what we do with that is how everything works. And I'm being a little cryptic there, but we'll get back to that. Go ahead, Ali.
I was inspired by the being brave, because that was for me as well. The the message was to I wrote it down actually when I opened my eyes, which was I have to communicate like what I have learned in my life. I have to share it. It costs so much to learn what I've learned so far. I'm 50, and this kind of midlife midlife point of being well, more than midlife, but you know what I mean, this middle kind of number, and it's like I have to write my books. I have to, communicate the ideas. I have to sow the seeds and do that as much as I what holds me back is I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't got it. I haven't got the answer that I want to communicate yet. And I think that in that experience that you just took us through, the real message was that we advance because we pick up and build on previous educated experiences. So yeah, thank you for that. And thank you, Sharuk, for being brave, because you inspired me to be brave. See, it's already working.
Great. So, simple answers. The underlying problem of humanity is consciousness. There's nothing else that drives our behavior except consciousness. What Mandy said about trauma, that's a layer. We are affected by all of our experiences, and therefore our behaviors change based on our experiences, and our consciousness actually begin to see reality through different filters, whether they are through bias or prejudice or trauma or economic need or stress, or all of these things are layers on top of our pure consciousness. Because if we can see reality as it is, we will behave absolutely perfectly. So this deviation from being one with our ecosystem and with each other and with the economics and everything that is part of human activity is deviated, is actually taken off the right path, because we've accumulated all these conditionings and programmings that actually lead us in the direction of behaviors that, as I think what Mariana was saying, very few people get out of bed saying, how can I trash the planet today? However, we're all complicit. And because we are moving towards a planet that's going towards very strongly towards authoritarian right politics, with a complete disregard for the needs of the community, the needs of the environment, the needs of living things, in order for the pursuit of profit and personal motives and self-interest, we are forced back into realizing that any change that we're going to make is going to be personal. And from the personal, we can create small things. And this is the idea of the project for this course, is to generate a small project that can make a real effect, that considers all of the implications and all the potential impacts of the project, both environmentally, socially, and economically. And in the end, these three, what we call the legs of the stool of sustainability, are only three parts of something bigger, which is well-being. So the whole intent of everything that we do tends towards the health and the well-being of ourselves and everything around us. And if we do that, we can actually meet that sort of aspiration of the triple top line of growing prosperity, celebrating community, and enhancing the health of all species for all time. But it's not easy because we don't have either the knowledge, the skill, or the courage to actually go out there and expose ourselves to the pushback for people who are not willing to actually acknowledge the contradictions, as Mariana was saying, and do something about them, because it's not easy. And we've had all of these doom and gloom people like Al Gore telling us about the horrendous consequences if we don't change our behaviors. That kind of leadership does not help us move forward. We need to find a different way to inspire people, to welcome them into this wonderful project of making a better world for ourselves and everybody else, where we can actually respect and satisfy our own self-interest and needs, and also balance those self-needs or that self-interest with the needs and the rights of others, as well as all living things. And that's not easy, that's complicated. However, one of the things that I've discovered in my research is that, as Ali and Shuruk pointed out, courage does not come because we're just naturally disposed to go out there and be brave. Courage comes from a different place within our consciousness. And that braveness, that courage comes from connecting to purpose. If there's something that's meaningful to us and sufficiently powerful in that meaning, we will be fearless. And that's something that I discovered in my research, that fearlessness comes from not just a natural disposition, it actually comes from something that engages us, that empowers us. And as I will see next week in the framework, once we connect to our own purpose, we get out of bed and do something right. And we're willing to go the distance. We're willing to go out there and get on a platform and shout from the rooftops. When we believe in it so strongly that we know that my own security is no longer as important as getting that message out. So part of the purpose of this course is to help you strengthen your own voice so that you can actually refine, hone in on your voice, which comes from your purpose, which comes from your own consciousness, which nobody can give to you. My personal mission as a leader is I cannot empower other people. I can only try and help other people empower themselves. And I can only do that by sharing what I've learned, what my skills are, what my knowledge is, but I cannot transfer that to you. You can't transfer it to somebody else. You can only build your own approach to regenerative leadership or any other way of doing things, and sharing that in such a way that what you do suddenly goes up a notch or two or three. And suddenly what Dean was saying about connecting becomes easier and more sophisticated and more wise, in the sense that you know now how to do that key thing, that consciousness is only valuable or interesting if we learn how to connect with one another. So the next thing that we'll be talking about is dialogue. And that's why we're having this conversation. And this conversation has no agenda other than, can we do something better? And can you, each of you, find a ways that you can do your thing better? And that's why my own motto is, we need to redefine ourselves before we can redesign what we do. So half of what we do here in this course with that personal leadership assessment questionnaire is, who am I and how do I do things and what do I need to do better? So what do I do well? So in that questionnaire, you got this scoring of between 1 and 5. And those things where you're below a 3, you can say, we try to avoid now with appreciative inquiry, and we can get into other frameworks. of looking at the things that we are weak in. What are the things that we want to be better at? And how do we actually leverage the things we are good at and strong at, so that those things pull us up out of other things where we're not that good? And how do we complement our strengths and those areas that we want to work on when we actually convene other people and invite them into our work so that they complement what we do and who we are? So all of these are some of the conceptions of things that we'll be working on as we get into the project that I'll be asking you to sort of flesh out as you go through the outline, to tell us not only what you want to do, but why you want to do it. And the most important thing here is how you are going to do it. So you might have an idea of what, and obviously that's not my business. You should discover your why, and I'll be asking you to share that as you get into the project. But what I can help is the how. How can we use something like the Regenerative Leadership Framework to actually ensure that you can focus on your process? The secret is in process. The outcome will come of its own. If you focus on process from the design stage all the way through to implementation and then assessment and evaluation, if you can put together a process that is, as they would say in Buddhism, that is impeccable, the impeccable result is inevitable. Unfortunately, we get so distracted, we shoot ahead to the end goal. We try to sell the outcome of what we do rather than getting people involved in the design process. So we think about everything we want to do and then we try to sell it to somebody rather than inviting them in to be a part of the design of the process. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about as we get into the framework, about how leaders who are highly effective, they don't come in with a full strategy or strategic plan and they tell people what to do, or they sell the plan to other people saying, if we do this, you're going to make a lot of money, or you're going to become famous. Or so they're already trying to bribe people with the end result rather than coming in and saying, I haven't a clue as to how we're going to figure this problem out. But if we come together and we ask the right questions, maybe, just maybe, we can put off the demise of the human species a little longer. And it could be as critical as that. We no longer have the luxury today of time. We are pressed for time today to figure out some of these things. And regardless of where you are, what your profession is, there are things that you can do today that will have impact not just on your profession, but on everything else. And so figuring out, and that can be very difficult, particularly for what we call single bottom line nonprofits, particularly when they're working with very vulnerable populations. So if you're working with high poverty, high needs communities, it's very difficult to talk about environmental issues because the needs are so urgent that there is no time to think about those lovely things like the birds and the bees and the butterflies and the trees. You need to get urgent solutions out there. And part of that is, as Jeffrey Sachs says, below the bottom rung of poverty, we have to do triage. We have to solve the problem right there and then with external help. Once you get above the bottom rung of poverty, it becomes possible to help people create solutions for themselves. And so our work is not to solve other people's problems, it's to come together to solve our problems together. That's the key. And that requires the right kind of conversation. And so what we get into in the framework is generative dialogue. How are you going to create a generative conversation around your work with other people in such a way that you can start with a small thing and then scale it up without losing the integrity of the work that you're doing? Because once you bring other people in, if they're not infected by the bug of your passion and your purpose and brought their own purpose in, very soon things will begin to happen that will undermine the quantity and the integrity of what you propose to do originally. So we need to create a project that can actually be mainstreamed and scaled up while preserving all of its characteristics as components without becoming debased or obviously losing its integrity. So these are some of the concepts we're going to be thinking about and working on as we get into the conversations going forward. Are there any questions at this time or any comments? Okay, well, let's get to some of the sort of nuts and bolts, shall we? Let me share my screen. Have you all been able to see this presentation or not? You have? Okay, so I can go
Yes.
through this quickly. Good. So obviously, everything I've been talking about is sort of summarized here. The idea that the deliverable, the final deliverable is going to be that project, and you'll have 2 weeks after the end so the last live session is going to be March 28th. So you'll have till about the mid-April to get that outline fleshed out, sent to me for my review feedback. I will schedule meetings individually with you if you want to go over what you're doing and help you figure things out. And obviously, I'll be asking you to share some of that with this group each Friday. You'll notice that we won't be together on the fourth Friday because I'm traveling. I'm going down to Argentina to see my kids and grandkids on that week. So we'll be coming back on March the 28th. So we have 3 Fridays ahead of us, and then we'll skip 2 weeks and come back on March the 28th for the final live session. So there's plenty of time for you to think through what it is that you want to do, how to do it, and we'll be working on that as we go. There is the online forum, hopefully on the website, you can connect to. Some of you have already done your introductions in the general page. Today we're going through week 1, and over the weekend I will be opening up week 2, so you can start browsing the resources for week 2. There's also a link to a weekly reflective journal. This is private. So if you want to go beyond the forum, which I pose questions about what have you learned about sustainability, regeneration, or sustainable development this week, you can write about that. It is a requirement that you at least read and respond to if you don't actually create a post of your own. We do want to keep you involved because these live sessions obviously are very brief. Not everybody can be here, so I'll be sharing the recording. The forum is a place where you can actually connect with each other, build your own network, exchange ideas, and actually start creating your own global network or developing your global network. Whereas the weekly reflective journal is a question that I ask that comes only to me. If you want to reflect on something deeper, this is private. It only comes to me. It's not shared with the rest of the group. So we've gone through this. This is work I did in Brazil a few years ago. We've actually done this activity. These are some of the definitions. I think the only key point I want to make here is the vocabulary that we use. It's important for us to develop a language that is common. So basically, the notion that sustainability is the end result and sustainable development is the process towards that end result. So these are very key, simple concepts, but people sometimes use them interchangeably, and they're not really. They really are distinct concepts. And this was developed by Alan Atkinson, who's now the Minister of the Environment for Sweden, and a musician, and a wonderful guy who's done consulting projects around the world, developed this pyramid that we'll be talking about later. He was actually one of the key players in developing the Earth Charter for the United Nations back in the year 2000. So a global player in sustainability and sustainable development. This particular visual is now a bit dated, but what it shows is that our impact is accelerating at a geometric rate. And so everything you see here in all of these different environmental or economic trends is how human impact over the last 60, 70 years has accelerated so impressively, so incredibly, that we are close to running out of a number of resources. And obviously, the wealthy are wealthier than ever, and the poor are poorer than ever. We can't seem to be able to reconcile these incredible gaps between what Marilena was saying, what we'd like to see happen, and what actually does happen, and what we can do about it. And then we get it. Well, I'm not going to get into the Brundtland report back from 1987 when sustainable development was first coined as a topic. But the most important thing about here is that here's where the United Nations moved from an environmental concern to including social needs as a global issue. So environmental and social needs and dimensions of everything that we do became now part of the global conversation. And we have these models that you may have seen before. This is an older one from John Elkington, where we see the triple bottom line of how do we integrate the natural environment with the economic environment and the social environment to get to the sustainability sweet spot. And if we ignore any of these, then we can get other results, but we're not going to have a sustainable future. And then Peter Senge created this newer version where the actual 3 dimensions of sustainability are nested, where the economy drives everything. So the work of Everson here on finance and is really important because the economy drives everything. Mandy was mentioning it before, how economic needs will actually allow us to do other things that are not so healthy for ourselves and others because we're driven by needs. So, but we do need to understand that all of this is inserted within our society, which obviously is then inserted within the natural environment. And we do need to understand that that environment has limits. And there's several resources actually put into week 1, for example, about Kate Raworth's donuts, and where are we with regard to those environmental limits, and can we live within the donuts? And so, again, these are resources for you to sort of peruse and take a look at. This is my definition of regeneration, which is different to sustainability and sustainable development, which is where I come from with this approach to the work that we do. And so instead of looking at the environmental problems, we realize that we got to go within to our own inner work, our own consciousness, before we can actually change our behaviors. And the purpose of regeneration is to restore the damage we've done, to actually replace the systems, the human systems that are in place with new ones, and in that way be able to do something completely new, because every human system today is obsolete. Whether we're in education, in industry, economics, finance, politics, health, anything we look at as a human system is being corrupted by, you might call it, contaminated consciousness. We don't know how to live fulfilling lives that generate prosperity for all. And that means that our human systems are obsolete. They're absolutely not working. That means that we cannot try to change sometimes the systems we're in. We need to have the capacity and the will to reinvent everything. And this goes back to in reinventing the wheel of human systems. And so whether Dean is in community safety and service, how do you modify that to actually empower communities so that there isn't risk or insecurity? And how do you then work in education and economics and in community empowerment to make that happen? So that people like ourselves, were general leaders, police officers, or lawyers, politicians become obsolete. We no longer need those professions. I think one of the things that we might all think about is, how can I work in such a way that my profession becomes unnecessary? That would be the sign, the final sign, that we can move away from things that are designed to protect us from others, in order to see that everything we do empowers ourselves and others. And this is the focus on human consciousness. And this is the legacy, obviously, the motto. That means it requires us to redefine who we are before we can redesign what we do. Otherwise, if we don't do that, we're not willing to do that, then nothing's going to happen. And we need to change. One of the key insights here is tone. People who work in sustainability, I mentioned Al Gore, and he's done a good job. He's improved over the years. But if you look at Greta, and I can't remember her last name at this moment, talking from this side of the leadership tone, the voice of leadership, does not produce the empowerment of people to want to get up and do something. If we can move towards inspiring people rather than saying, you are responsible for the damage, can we inspire people to say, well, what would you like to see and how can I help you? How can we help each other figure this out together? Creating rather this sense of opportunities, and Mandy, who just had to leave, she was talking about this sense of scarcity and poverty. There are opportunities. There is enough wealth on this planet for everybody to lead a prosperous, fulfilling life of meaning. We just don't know how to put it together. But there are opportunities if we dig deeper. And it's not an organization, it's personal. What can I do? And then do it with one other person. Think of how cells divide and create molecules, or how atoms create molecules and then cells, and how new living things come into being. My proposal to you is that you think of your project as that single cell that will divide and split and then grow into something organic that can make a real difference in your community, in your work, in your profession. So what can you do and what can I do? And let's look at possibilities rather than limitation. We can't do this because people are angry or there's not enough money, there's not enough resources. So Marinella has a financial challenge about how to develop that program at her private university. How can we get around those conceptions of limitations and create abundance? So in Marianella's case, maybe are there partners willing to bring in funding that you might identify in the community that can realize that where you can actually talk about how this project can actually not only help other people, but your partner become a better business, corporation, industry, community, organization. It's always about benefit to everybody. So this is what I talk about when I say, think about how a tree hugger has a conversation with a CEO of a corporation. These conversations often are impossible unless the tree hugger understands. Yeah, anybody has to go. That's fine. This is scheduled for an hour. However, we keep it on for another 30 minutes just to have a conversation. So at any time, if you need to drop off, go ahead and reach out. So thanks, Andy, for joining us. And I'll be emailing everybody anyway. So thinking about how we can actually make this work by believing in people and loving oneself and loving others. And we'll talk about that as we get into. I'm not going to go into the fractal of how we start balancing all the different elements of sustainability into the work that we do. So let's move on. You're all familiar with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And if you're not, here they are. You have the link. Everything that we do is connected to any of these. And basically, these are 16 goals that you can connect to. You can actually refer to them in your project or see how they're relevant. And the 17th is the United Nations has realized since back in 2015 when this was approved to replace the Millennium Development Goals, that the only way we can do this is through partnerships. And as I mentioned before, since we know that countries like the United States are moving away from collaboration into competition, moving away from cooperation into confrontation, collaboration on a global level is becoming more and more complex and more difficult. So how do we generate partnerships and collaborations when the people at the top across the planet are moving away from that? And so, as you know, the US has pulled out of the climate partnerships. So how do we continue the work even though we have these massive powers that are not going to be supportive? And that's really one of the big questions for ourselves. However, we can still do things at our own individual level. So, activities for this week, as you know, and if you haven't been able to do them, that's fine. We'll take a look at week one and things that you can look at. But in terms of homework, one is get on the discussion forum and see what you've learned from this week from the resources. There's no rush, because if you haven't been able to look at the materials, then clearly you're not in a good position to be able to answer the questions. And here is the question for the reflective journal, that if you want to do some more writing, you want to do some sort of thinking through by writing. Writing is a wonderful way to actually empower yourself as a thinker. Then that's something to consider, and I'll be glad to read that and to respond. And then for next week, so this week was reading chapter 1, which is an introduction to my book. Chapter 2 is about the regenerative leadership framework, which is what we will be covering next week. And we'll be getting into more of the actual practical details of that. There's a wonderful video, which is it goes back in time, but Majora Carter is one of the people that I believe in her TED Talk is perhaps one of the most powerful I've ever encountered with regard to being a regenerative leader. So I believe that this video is still as relevant today as it was back in 2006. So some people said, hey, isn't it about time you updated the video? And I said, I'd love to. So if anybody has something newer that's more relevant than this one, please share it and I'll be glad to replace it. For the moment, it still is a wonderful talk, and I encourage you to look at it, because we're going to be talking about this next week and seeing how she embodies some of those qualities of the regenerative leader that you can then see reflected in yourself or not, and things that you might want to work towards it in yourself. And that's the bird's eye view of that. And just to finish off, oh dear, sorry about that. Any comments or questions at this time? So here's the journal. As you know, if you've been able to get into the site, in the journal page, here are the sustainable change self-assessment. And let me just show that briefly. So as I mentioned, the questionnaire has all of these topics where you can self-assess yourself. And all I want you to do is at the end, just take away this, copy and paste this table into a Word document or whatever you use, and to create for yourself some outcomes, some desired outcomes for yourself that you'd like to work on. And here's an example. If I want to become more adaptable, what actions will you take in order to do this? With whom? Who are you going to practice with? When? What timeline do you give yourself? And what would the desired outcomes be for your KPIs or key performance indicators that will show you that you've been successful in implementing that goal or objective for yourself in a way that will make you a more effective leader? So that's homework more concretely. So send this to me as an attachment by email, and I'll be glad to provide some feedback. And there are no silly answers here. So there's all sorts of little things here that you can, here's appropriately balancing caution and courage. That one's for Sharuk and for Ali. All right. So how do you do that? So you can measure yourself on that and see how you can build that into a goal. So just look at yourselves, see what that can do for you. And then last but not least, we got the project, which is, this could be anything: a business plan, education program, a community outreach and development program, an environment restoration program. And there are two sections really. The first part is all about you. This is about what you want to do. This part is my part, the how you're going to do it. So up here, you got the what and the why, where you give an explanation of what you want to do and why you want to do it. Here you go through the obvious elements of any kind of project with what your goals are, what you're going to be doing, who you need to be involved, the timeline, what resources you need, and some of those key performance indicators to show success at the end of the project. What is it you want to accomplish by the end of the project? Here is where we'll be working with me in the how, the process. So as we say, trust the process. If you do this right, this will happen. So that's what we'll be focusing. But for next week, see if you can bring an idea of what the project might be and to share, and we can talk about it and begin fleshing that out into the how you will actually do it, so that you can begin creating those generative dialogues with people to actually move the needle forward. For the moment, just think about those things, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. Let me just close with, so we looked at week 1 today. So all of these resources I mentioned, all of these are there for you to actually take a look at. Definition of sustainability. If you haven't measured your ecological footprint, you can. We have videos. We have somewhere I have here. Okay, that will be next week then. So week 2, we're going to be getting into next week. I'll open this up on Sunday. Here's the link. So the link is here for the Zoom session next week. Here are all the materials, the recorded session, which you can watch the presentation for the framework. Here's Majora's video, chapter 2 of the book, the framework itself, and then there are other resources that you can actually look at, and you will find something for education, for business, for government, for community empowerment, for finance. And any of you who don't see the materials that might be relevant to you in terms of your field of interest, email me. I've curated these materials. I've kept them to the minimum necessary to provide some teasers, but obviously there's a vast literature out there in each of your fields that we can explore. So if you are finding it hard to find materials or readings or resources or websites in your particular industry or field of interest, let me know and we can work on that together. So that's it for me this week. Any comments, questions, or thoughts or suggestions?
No, but thank you so much.
My pleasure. Well, thank you for listening. This is the more me session. I promise you the next week we're going to get more into the work itself and make it more interesting for you. And hopefully you will come back with your own ideas and we can start making connections to your own purpose and how we can create a platform on which you can build your own ideas as to how to change the world and reach that last moment in your life having no regrets. On the contrary, leaving your bronze statue somewhere in Damascus or somewhere, because you've left behind something so valuable that people will want to recognize you forever. All right? Any other
Thank you
thoughts?
so much.
If not, have a great week. Look at the materials as far as you can, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the contrary,
Bye.
thank you, guys.